The signal came on a cold December night in 2089. It changed everything humanity thought it knew about the universe. Radio. Telescopes across the world picked it up at the same moment. A message, clear and deliberate, broadcast on frequencies that no natural phenomenon could produce. Within hours, the greatest minds on Earth confirmed what many had suspected but none had proven. Humanity was not alone. The Galactic Consortium announced itself with the confidence of an empire that had never known defeat. 12 species united under a single government, ruling over 300 worlds across the galaxy. They had watched Earth develop for centuries, they explained. They had seen humans discover fire, build cities, and reach for the stars. And now at last, humanity had developed enough to receive their invitation to join the greater community of civilized beings. Every government on Earth received the message. Every scientist studied it. Every citizen waited to hear how their leaders would respond. Earth said nothing. The decision was made in secret, in a bunker beneath the Swiss Alps, where the newly formed United Terran Council held its first emergency session. Director Samuel Price of the Global Defense Initiative stood before the assembled leaders and made his case. Humanity knew nothing about these aliens, he argued. Their technology, their true intentions, their weaknesses. To respond immediately would be to reveal everything about Earth while learning nothing in return. Better to listen, better to watch. Better to prepare for whatever might come. The vote was close, but the council agreed. Earth would stay silent for the next 63 years. Humanity listened to the stars with an intensity that bordered on obsession. Every transmission the consortium broadcast was captured, studied, and translated. Linguists learned to read 12 alien languages. Scientists mapped the technology behind consortium ships, weapons, and communications. Military planners identified strategic vulnerabilities that the aliens themselves had probably forgotten existed. And all the while, humanity built deep beneath the surface of Mars, in shipyards that no consortium probe ever detected. The first vessels of the Terran Defense Fleet took shape. They were small at first, experimental craft designed to test theories developed from stolen knowledge. But each generation improved on the last. Each ship was faster, stronger, and more deadly than the one before. Admiral Catherine Cole remembered the day she first set foot on a human starship. She had been a young officer then, selected for a program so secret that even her family believed she had died in a training accident. The ship was crewed by the standards that would come later, barely capable of reaching the outer planets. But standing on its bridge, looking out at the stars, she understood what humanity was building, not just ships. Hope, the consortium, meanwhile, grew increasingly puzzled by Earth's silence. They sent probes that humans allowed to scan the surface, showing only what humanity wanted them to see. They sent signals demanding response, which went unanswered. They even sent a diplomatic vessel that orbited the moon for 3 weeks, broadcasting offers of friendship and warnings. Of consequence in equal measure, Earth responded to none of it. In the halls of the consortium, humanity became a subject of amusement and contempt. The primitive species that had somehow stumbled onto radio technology but lacked the basic intelligence to use it properly. The fearful creatures cowering on their little blue world, too terrified to even acknowledge their betters' ambassador. Veteran of the Zethkai Dominion made a career of mocking humanity in consortium council sessions. He called them the silent failures, the cosmic embarrassment, the species too stupid to recognize an opportunity when it was offered. His speeches were broadcast across consortium space, and everywhere they played. Beings of a dozen different species laughed at the joke that was Earth. Admiral Cole collected every one of those speeches. She stored them in a personal archive that she reviewed whenever she needed motivation. The insults burned in her memory like fuel for a fire that had not yet been lit. On Earth, life continued in ways that would have seemed normal to any outside observer. Cities grew. Technology advanced. Generations were born, lived, and died without ever knowing the truth about what waited in the stars. The secret was kept by a remarkable few, passed down through carefully selected successors who understood that humanity's survival might depend on patience. Lieutenant. Commander Daniel Harris was 27 years old when his father told him the truth. The elder Harris had served in the fleet for 30 years, commanding one of the first combat-capable vessels ever built by human hands. Now, dying of a cancer that even advanced medicine could not cure, he passed the burden to his son. "There are things out there," his father said, "that think we are nothing. They laugh at us. They dismiss us. And one day, they will try to take everything we have. When that day comes, you need to be ready." Daniel joined the fleet 3 months later. He rose through the ranks quickly, driven by a purpose that most of his peers could not understand. By the time he took command of the Defender, one of 12 ships in humanity's secret fleet, it spent 15 years preparing for a war that might never come, but it would come. Everyone in the fleet knew it. The consortium would not tolerate silence forever. The signs began appearing in 2150. Increased. Consortium military activity near human space. Intelligence intercepts discussing the Earth problem in terms that suggested a solution was being planned. Diplomatic communications that referenced humanity with a new tone, not of amusement, but of irritation. Admiral Cole called her captains together for the first time in the fleet's history. They met on a barren moon at the edge of the solar system. 12 commanders representing everything humanity had built in secret over 6 decades. "They are coming," she told them. "Perhaps not this year. Perhaps not next year. But soon. And when they arrive, they will expect to find a primitive species ready to submit. They will expect fear. They will expect surrender." She looked at each of them in turn. These men and women who had given their lives to a cause their own world did not know existed. They will find something else entirely. The fleet dispersed to its hiding places throughout the solar system. On Mars, the shipyards continued their work, building more vessels for a conflict that grew closer with each passing day. On Earth, the United Terran Council made quiet preparations, moving populations away from strategic targets and stockpiling resources in locations that could survive. Orbital bombardment, and in the space between worlds. Humanity waited, silent, patient, ready. 63 years of preparation. 63 years of insults and mockery and dismissal. The consortium had no idea what it had created with its contempt. No idea that every laugh, every joke, every casual cruelty had been heard, recorded, and remembered. The universe thought humanity was afraid. The universe was about to learn the truth. Silence had never meant fear. Silence had meant preparation. And when the silence finally ended, the galaxy would never forget what happened next. The ship appeared without warning on a Tuesday. Morning in June 2152, one moment. The space above Earth was empty except for the usual satellites and orbital stations. The next, a vessel the size of a small city hung in low orbit, blocking out the sun from millions of people below. It had bypassed every detection system humanity had publicly acknowledged, materializing as if it had always been there. Ambassador Vethrin of the Zethkai Dominion broadcast. His message on every frequency simultaneously. Television screens around the world flickered and changed. Radio stations went silent, then filled with an alien voice speaking in perfect English. Even personal devices, phones and tablets and computers, carried the transmission to every corner of human civilization. "The people of Earth," the ambassador began. "Your long silence has been noted and judged. Under the laws of the Galactic Consortium, a species that fails to establish diplomatic relations within 100 standard cycles forfeits its right to self-governance. You have failed. Earth is now claimed. In homes and offices, in schools and hospitals, in every place where humans gathered, the world stopped moving. For most people, this was the first confirmation that life existed beyond Earth. The shock was total and complete. But for those who knew the truth, the shock was of a different kind. The day they had prepared for had finally arrived. President Maria Santos received the transmission in her private office, surrounded by advisors who had been chosen specifically for this moment. Her face remained calm as she listened to the ambassador list his demands. 60 years of preparation had led to this. She would not show fear now. The terms were simple and absolute. Humanity would surrender all military assets within 30 days. Human governments would be dissolved and replaced with consortium administrative bodies. Human populations would be redistributed according to consortium economic needs. Those with useful skills would be assigned to appropriate positions. Those without would be relocated to labor colonies where they could contribute to the greater good. Human culture would be preserved, the ambassador assured his audience. Museums and archives would be established to document the quaint achievements of this primitive species. Future generations of consortium citizens could visit these exhibits and learn about the simple people who once called this planet home. It was, Ambassador Vethrin explained with something that might, been kindness, a mercy. Lesser species rarely survived long without guidance. The consortium was offering humanity a future. Not the future humans might have chosen, the future nonetheless. The transmission continued for nearly an hour, detailing every aspect of the integration process. Compliance would be rewarded with minimal disruption. Resistance would be crushed without hesitation. The consortium had integrated hundreds of species over its long history. Some had accepted their place gracefully. Others had fought and suffered for their foolishness. The choice was humanity's to make. On the bridge of the Defender, hidden in the shadow of Neptune, Lieutenant Commander Daniel Harris watched the broadcast with his crew. Nobody spoke. The weight of the moment pressed down on all of them like a physical force. These were men and women who had trained their entire lives for war. They had run simulations and drills, studied tactics and strategies, prepared for every scenario they could imagine. But nothing had prepared them for the reality of hearing an alien voice demand the surrender of their entire species. Harris looked at the faces around him. Fear was there, certainly, but something else too. Something harder and more dangerous. These were not people who would submit quietly. The ambassador concluded his transmission with a final warning. The Zethkai Dominion, acting on behalf of the Galactic Consortium, looked forward to educating humanity about its proper place in the cosmos. There would be resistance, of course. There always was. But resistance would be overcome, as it always had been. It was better to learn submission early, Vethrin advised. Pride was a luxury that only the powerful could afford. And humanity was not powerful. On Earth, the United Terran Council convened an emergency session. Leaders from every nation gathered in the bunker beneath the Swiss Alps. The same bunker where the decision for silence had been made 63 years before. The atmosphere was tense, but controlled. These were people who had known this day would come. President Santos addressed the assembly with a steadiness that surprised even those who knew her best. She spoke of the generations who had worked in secret, building humanity's true defense. She spoke of the fleet hidden among the outer planets, waiting for the order to reveal itself. She spoke of the weapons that had been developed, the strategies that had been planned, the preparations that had been made. Humanity would not surrender. Humanity would fight. And humanity would show the consortium exactly what kind of species had been waiting behind the silence. The council voted unanimously to reject the ambassadors' demands in orbit above Earth. Ambassador Vethrin waited for the response he was certain would come. He had done this many times before, on many worlds. The pattern was always the same. Initial defiance followed by realization, followed by submission. Primitive species always believed they were special. They always learned otherwise. His escort fleet waited at the edge of the solar system. 20 warships, more than enough to handle any resistance a species at humanity's level of development could offer. If the primitives proved stubborn, a demonstration of force would change their minds. Quickly enough, the ambassador had studied human history during the journey to Earth. A violent species, it concluded, always fighting among themselves over territory and resources and ideas. They would be no match for a united opponent with superior technology. A few destroyed cities, a few million dead, and they would understand their situation clearly. He almost felt sorry for them. Almost. On the 29th day, the response came. Not from Earth's governments, but from a place the consortium had never detected. A fleet of 12 ships emerged from the shadow of Mars, their stealth systems disengaging for the first time since deployment. They formed a line between Earth and the ambassador's vessel. Weapons armed and ready, Ambassador Vethrin stared at his display in confusion. The ships were small, crude by consortium standards, but they existed. They should not have existed, but they did. A transmission arrived from the flagship of the impossible fleet. The face on the screen was human, female, with gray hair and eyes that held no fear at all. Ambassador, Admiral Catherine Cole said, humanity respectfully declines your generous offer. Please leave our space immediately. Any attempt at forced integration will be met with proportional response. The ambassador's confusion turned to anger. He ordered his escort fleet forward. 20 warships against 12 primitive vessels. The outcome was not in doubt. But as the consortium ships entered the solar system, something changed in the eyes of every human who served in the secret fleet. Fear faded. Doubt disappeared. What remained was something the consortium had never faced before. Humanity was done being silent. And humanity was very, very angry. The Battle of Luna lasted 11 minutes. In that short span of time, everything the Galactic Consortium believed about humanity was proven wrong. Hi. Admiral Kethvorin had commanded the consortium escort fleet from his position at the edge of the solar system. When Ambassador Vethrin requested military support, the Admiral dispatched 20 warships without concern. 20 vessels against 12 primitive craft that should not have existed at all. The mathematics were simple. The outcome was certain. The consortium ships entered the inner solar system in standard formation, a wedge designed to maximize firepower and minimize vulnerability. They had used this formation successfully against 100 different species. It had never failed. It failed now. Captain Lisa Grant commanded the swift, smallest, and fastest of the human vessels. Her ship broke formation the moment the enemy came into range, accelerating at speeds that made consortium targeting systems display error messages. She led a wing of 4 craft in a sweeping arc around the enemy formation. Drawing fire that never came close to hitting its targets, consortium weapons were designed for predictable opponents. Ships that moved in straight lines that responded to threats in expected ways, that followed the rules of engagement that every civilized species understood. Human ships followed no such rules. The Swift danced through the enemy formation like a spark in a powder magazine. Grant fired as she moved, her weapons locking onto targets for fractions of a second before releasing their payloads. Consortium shields, designed to deflect sustained energy weapon attacks, had no answer for missiles that detonated on contact. The first consortium cruiser died before its captain even understood what was happening. Explosions tore through its hull in a dozen places, each one targeting a critical system that human intelligence had identified years before. The ship went dark, tumbling slowly in the void, its crew still alive but completely helpless. Admiral Catherine Cole watched from the bridge of the Valar, coordinating the attack with a calm that surprised even herself. 60 years of preparation had come down to this moment. 60 years of studying the enemy, learning their weaknesses, building weapons designed specifically to exploit those weaknesses. The theory had always been sound. Now, at last, the theory became reality. Human ships were smaller than their consortium counterparts, but size meant nothing in space combat. What mattered was speed, agility, and the ability to strike without warning. Human vessels had all three in abundance. Lieutenant Commander Daniel Harris brought the Defender into the heart of the enemy formation, his ship's weapons firing continuously. Around him, consortium vessels tried to reorient, to bring their guns to bear on targets that refused to stay still. They failed again and again. The Defender took damage. All the human ships took damage. But consortium weapons, optimized for sustained fire against slow-moving targets, could not land the killing blows they needed. Human ships absorbed hits that should have crippled them and kept fighting, their crews refusing to acknowledge what should have been impossible. Harris felt the Defender shudder as another consortium beam scored his hull. Damage reports flooded his display. A section of the ship had lost atmosphere. 3 crew members were dead. But the ship was still moving, still fighting. and that was all that mattered. The fifth consortium vessel to fall was their command ship, destroyed by a coordinated strike from 3 human vessels at once. Its destruction broke whatever order remained in the consortium formation. The remaining ships began to scatter, each captain now fighting alone against an enemy that seemed to be everywhere at once. Admiral Cole opened a channel to the ambassador's diplomatic vessel, which had retreated to a safe distance as soon as the fighting began. "Ambassador Veteran," she said, "your escort fleet is being destroyed. Order them to stand down and withdraw, or we will finish what we have started." The ambassador did not respond. He could not respond. His mind refused to process what he was seeing on his displays. 20 consortium warships, crewed by veterans of 100 campaigns, being systematically dismantled by a species that should not have been capable of building a functional starship. The last consortium vessel surrendered 9 minutes after the battle began. Its captain, a young Zethkai officer named Ketsera, broadcast his surrender with something like admiration in his voice. He had never seen ships move the way human ships moved. He had never faced an enemy that fought with such reckless, brilliant ferocity. When the fighting ended, the space above Luna was filled with debris and drifting hulks. 20 consortium warships destroyed or disabled. For human ships damaged, none destroyed. The casualties were acceptable, though each human death was felt deeply by crews that had trained together for years. Admiral Cole opened a final channel to the ambassador. "You came here expecting to find primitives," she said. "You expected fear. You expected submission. You found neither. Humanity does not submit. Humanity does not surrender. And humanity does not forgive those who threaten its home." The ambassador's ship fled at maximum speed, its engines straining to escape the solar system as quickly as possible. Behind it, the wreckage of his escort fleet served as a warning to any who might follow. On Earth, the battle was broadcast to a population that still struggled to understand what was happening. Most had learned of alien life only days before. Now they watched as their own ships they had not known existed, defended their planet against invasion. President Maria Santos addressed the world from the steps of the United Nations building in New York. Behind her, the sky was clear and blue, unmarked by any evidence of the battle that had raged above the moon. "For 63 years, she told her people, we prepared for this day. We knew that silence would not last forever. We knew that eventually we would be forced to reveal ourselves. We hoped that day would come on our terms, through peaceful contact and mutual respect. That hope has been denied." She paused, looking into cameras that carried her words to every corner of the planet. "But let the galaxy understand this. Humanity is not afraid. We have spent our entire history fighting for our survival, our freedom, and our future. We will not stop now. The consortium has made its demands. Humanity has given its answer. And if they choose to continue this conflict, they will learn exactly what kind of species has been waiting behind the silence." The broadcast ended. Around the world, people who had lived their entire lives believing they were alone in the universe tried to process a new reality. There would be fear. There would be confusion. There would be those who wished humanity had chosen submission over war. But there was something else, too. Something that spread through the population. It's like fire through dry grass. Pride. Defiance. The stubborn refusal to accept a fate imposed by others. Humanity had been tested. Humanity had not been found wanting. And now, for the first time in history, every human alive understood that they faced the future together. The war had only begun. But in the space above Luna, among the wreckage of a fleet that had expected easy victory, a message had been sent that the entire galaxy would eventually receive. Humanity was no longer silent. And humanity was not to be dismissed. The Galactic Consortium did not take the defeat at Luna. High Admiral Kethforin received the news aboard his flagship. The eternal victory and his rage was terrible to witness. 20 warships destroyed by a species that should have been incapable of resistance. An ambassador humiliated. The reputation of the Zethkai Dominion the most powerful military force in the consortium, damaged in ways that would take generations to repair. He demanded a proper invasion fleet. The Consortium Council, shocked by the unexpected defeat, granted his request without debate. 300 ships from 6 member species assembled at the edge of human space, the largest military force deployed in 300 years. This time, there would be no mistakes. On Earth, President Maria Santos watched the fleet gather through intelligence provided by hidden observation posts scattered throughout the outer solar system. 300 ships, perhaps more coming. Against humanity's 12 damaged vessels and whatever reinforcements the secret shipyards could produce. The mathematics were not encouraging. She called an emergency session of the United Terran Council. But this time, she addressed not just the leaders, but the entire population of Earth. The secret was no longer necessary. Humanity needed to understand what it faced. "We are outnumbered," she admitted. "Our fleet is small. Our experience is limited. By any conventional measure, we cannot win this war." She paused, letting the weight of her words settle over the billions watching. But conventional measures have never defined humanity. We have faced extinction before, from ice ages and plagues and wars of our own making. Each time, we survived. Each time, we grew stronger. We did not survive by accepting defeat. We survived by refusing to quit. The response surprised even her. Rather than despair, humanity mobilized. Factories that had produced consumer goods converted to military production. Scientists who had worked on civilian projects joined defense initiatives. Volunteers flooded recruitment centers, demanding the chance to serve however they could. Admiral Catherine Cole deployed her fleet to defensive positions throughout the solar system. 12 ships could not stop 300, but they could make the enemy pay for every kilometer of space they claimed. Hit-and-run tactics. Ambushes at jump points. Attacks on supply lines. The goal was not victory, but survival. It was buying time for humanity to build more ships and develop new weapons. The first clash came at the orbit of Neptune. The Consortium Advance Force, 50 ships sent ahead to secure the outer planets, countered resistance they had not expected. Captain Lisa Grant, now commanding the newly commissioned Vengeance, led a strike group that destroyed 7 enemy vessels before vanishing into the darkness between worlds. High Admiral Kethforin was forced to slow his advance, deploying ships to guard supply lines that came under constant attack. Progress that should have taken days stretched into weeks. Each day gave humanity more time to prepare. Sergeant Marcus Perry commanded a Marine unit aboard. The frigate Dawn's Light when it intercepted the Consortium intelligence vessel Bright Dawn. The enemy ship was small and lightly armed, but the information it carried was worth more than a dozen warships. Perry led 20 Marines in a boarding action that military historians would study for centuries. They breached the enemy hull in 3 places simultaneously. Overwhelming defenders who had never faced human close combat tactics. Consortium soldiers were trained for the measured, ritualistic combat that characterized warfare between civilized species. They were not prepared for humans who fought with controlled fury, who accepted wounds that should have been debilitating and kept fighting. The ship's computer core was secured within 17 minutes. Perry lost 4 Marines in the assault. He would carry their names in his memory for the rest of his life. The intelligence recovered from the Bright Dawn changed humanity's understanding of the war. The Consortium was not as united as it appeared. 3 member species had voted against the Earth campaign, arguing that humanity's unexpected resistance proved they deserved consideration as equals rather than conquest as inferiors. 2 more species were providing only token military support, their leaders privately hoping the Zethkai would fail, and the Zethkai themselves, the driving force behind the invasion, were deeply unpopular among their supposed allies. Centuries of arrogance and aggression had created resentments that simmered beneath the surface of consortium unity. The alliance held together through inertia and fear, not loyalty or shared purpose. Commander Patricia Webb received the intelligence at her station, deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. She had spent 40 years developing weapons that humanity hoped never to use. contingency plans for scenarios that seemed like nightmares. Now those nightmares were becoming reality, but the intelligence suggested a different path. Humanity did not need to defeat the entire consortium. It only needed to fight the Zethkai long enough for the Alliance to fracture under its own weight. President Santos approved a new strategy built around this insight. The fleet would focus its attacks on Zethkai vessels, avoiding engagement with ships from other species whenever possible. Diplomatic channels would be opened to consortium members who had opposed the war. Every crack in the enemy alliance would be exploited and widened. Lieutenant Commander Daniel Harris commanded the task force that intercepted a Zethkai supply convoy near Jupiter. The escort ships were overwhelmed quickly. Their destruction broadcast on frequencies that the entire consortium would receive. But the supply vessels were allowed to surrender. Their crews treated with a consideration that surprised everyone who witnessed it. "These are not our enemies," Harris told his crew. "These are conscripts, forced to serve in a war they did not choose. We will treat them as we would wish to be treated." Word spread through the consortium fleet. Humans killed Zethkai without mercy, but showed compassion to others. The distinction was deliberate, and its message was clear. This war was not humanity against the galaxy. This war was humanity against those who had demanded their submission. High Admiral Kethvorin pressed his advance despite the losses, despite the delays, despite the growing unease among his allied commanders. His fleet pushed through the outer solar system, taking casualties, but maintaining its overwhelming numerical superiority. By September 2152, the consortium had established a presence in the inner solar system. Earth lay before them, defended by a fleet that had been reduced to 8 operational vessels. The end, the Admiral believed, was finally at hand. But deep beneath Earth's surface, in facilities that the consortium had our detected Commander Webb made her final preparations. The weapons she had developed were terrible things, capable of destruction on a scale that made nuclear arsenals seem like toys. She had hoped they would never be needed. That hope had died with the first consortium ship to enter human space. Now, as the enemy fleet gathered for its final assault, she activated systems that had waited decades for this moment. Humanity's last defense was coming online, and the consortium had no idea what was about to happen. "Hi, Admiral." Kethvorin made his final mistake on the morning of October 3rd, 2152. His fleet had pushed deep into the inner solar system, taking heavy losses but maintaining the numerical superiority that made ultimate victory inevitable. Earth's defenders had fallen back to a final defensive line around the home planet. Their ships damaged and their crews exhausted from months of constant combat. The end was near, but the Admiral wanted more than victory. He wanted humiliation. He wanted humanity to understand, in terms that could never be forgotten, exactly how helpless they truly were. He ordered his ships to begin bombarding human cultural sites from orbit. The pyramids of Giza were the first to fall. Monuments that had stood for 4,000 years reduced to rubble in minutes by weapons that humanity had no way to stop. The Great Wall of China followed, then the Colosseum in Rome, then the temples of Angkor Wat around the world. Humanity watched in horror as their history was erased. The targets had been evacuated weeks before, so no lives were lost. But something else died as the ancient stones crumbled. Something precious and irreplaceable. Kethvorin broadcast his message as the bombardment continued. This is the price of defiance. This is what happens to species that forget their place. Surrender now, and the destruction will stop. Continue your futile resistance, and there will be nothing left worth preserving. It was intended as a demonstration of power. A final blow to human morale before the inevitable surrender. It was the greatest calculation in galactic history. On the bridge of the Valar, Admiral Catherine Cole watched the destruction with eyes that had gone cold and hard. Around her, the bridge crew sat in stunned silence. Some wept. Others trembled with rage they could barely contain. Cole felt neither grief nor anger. She felt something far more dangerous. She felt certainty. "Open a channel to Commander Webb," she ordered. "Tell her to activate the network." Across the solar system, Hidden facilities that had waited decades for this moment came online. On moons and asteroids, in the depths of gas giants, and the cold darkness between planets, installations revealed themselves that the consortium had never detected. Each facility housed a component of the Cascade Array, humanity's final defense. Individually, each installation could generate an energy pulse capable of destabilizing the power core of any ship within range, together networked into a single weapon system. They represented destruction on a scale that even the consortium had never imagined. Commander Patricia Webb sat at her control station deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, her fingers hovering over the activation sequence. She had built this weapon hoping it would never be used. She had designed it to be terrible enough that no enemy would risk testing it. That hope was gone now. The pyramids were gone. The Colosseum was gone. 4,000 years of human achievement. Erased by an admiral who wanted to teach humanity a lesson about power, Webb entered the activation code Admiral. Cole opened a channel that reached every consortium ship in the solar system. "Hi, Admiral Keth, she said, her voice carrying the weight of everything humanity had endured. "You have destroyed monuments that my people built 3,000 years before your species learned to use fire. You have demonstrated that the consortium respects nothing but power." She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice held something that made even her own crew shiver. "Very well. We will demonstrate power." The first pulse hit the consortium fleet without warning. 30 ships went dark simultaneously, their power cores destabilized by an energy weapon they had never conceived of. The vessels were not destroyed. Their crews remained alive. But every system aboard those ships shut down completely. Leaving them drifting helplessly in the void, Keth Voren watched his fleet display flicker as ship after ship went silent. Confusion replaced arrogance. Fear replaced confusion. He had brought 300 warships to crush a primitive species. In the span of seconds, he had lost 10% of his force. "We could destroy your entire fleet," Cole continued. "We could reduce every ship you command to debris scattered across the solar system. We have the capability. We have the justification. You have given us every reason to show no mercy." She let the words hang in the silence. "We choose not to. We are not like you." Another pulse. Another 30 ships disabled. The consortium fleet began to scatter, captains abandoning formation in desperate attempts to escape weapons they could not see and could not defend against. "But understand this clearly," Cole said. "Humanity's patience has limits. We stayed silent because we were learning. We responded when you demanded submission. We fought when you invaded our home. And now you have crossed the final line." She leaned forward, her face filling screens on every consortium vessel. "You have insulted us. Hi." Admiral Keth Voren faced a choice that no commander in consortium history had ever confronted. He could continue his attack and lose everything. His fleet destroyed by weapons that humanity had kept hidden for exactly this moment. Or he could withdraw, abandon the campaign, and face the consequences of failure at home. His allied commanders made the choice for him. One by one, ships from the non-Sethkai species broke formation and retreated toward the edge of the solar system. They had joined this campaign reluctantly, pressured by Zethkai political power. Now, watching their supposed allies' invincible fleet being dismantled without resistance, they refused to share in the defeat. The admiral ordered his remaining ships to withdraw. The campaign was over. 3 days later, the Consortium Council convened an emergency session. The Zethkai were stripped of their military command authority. Their representatives removed from leadership positions they had held for centuries. Reparations were demanded for the destruction of human cultural heritage. A new diplomatic mission was authorized, one that would approach Earth not as superiors, but as equals. Ambassador Vethrin, the same ambassador who had demanded humanity's submission 6 months before, delivered the consortium's formal apology. He asked, with considerably more humility than before, if humanity might be interested in discussing terms of mutual cooperation. President Maria Santos let him wait 3 days before responding. Her address was broadcast not just to Earth, but to every world in the consortium. She spoke of peace, of cooperation, of humanity's desire to join the galactic community as partners rather than subjects. She spoke of forgiveness for those who had opposed the war and understanding for those who had been misled. But she also spoke of memory. Humanity will not forget the bombardment, she said. We will not forget the insults, the dismissal, the assumption that our silence meant we were weak. We will not forget that respect must be earned, not demanded. And we will not forget that we earned that respect by refusing to surrender when surrender seemed the only choice. She paused. And when she continued, her voice carried the weight of everything humanity had survived. We are humanity. We've always found a way. We always will. In the space between worlds, the wreckage of the consortium campaign drifted slowly through the void. On Earth, crews worked to rebuild the monuments that had been destroyed. Not as they had been, but as something new. Incorporating the rubble of the old into foundations for the future. And in the archives of the consortium, a new entry was added to the official records of spacefaring species. It would be read by beings across the galaxy for centuries to come. A warning and a lesson for anyone who might consider underestimating the small blue world at the edge of known space. Humans, it read, approach with caution. They stayed silent for 60 years, watching and learning and building. When threatened, they revealed capabilities beyond anything expected. When their heritage was attacked, they demonstrated weapons that could have destroyed an entire fleet, but chose restraint instead. Most importantly, they do not forget insults, and they do not forgive those who underestimate them. The stars humanity had proven were large enough for everyone. But some species demanded respect through strength rather than words. Earth was one of those species. The galaxy had learned that lesson at last.